Haunted Canterbury Revisited with John Hipsley. Publishing soon. Watch this space. Here follows a short recording of a new ghost story I've come across, based around John Knight and his gibbet cage at the Old City Wall. Listen if you dare.
On the corner of Dover Street and Upper Chantry Lane in Canterbury, few passers-by realise that the very stones beneath their feet once bore witness to a horror that lingers still. It was here in 1706 that a boy of barely 14 years swung in a gibbet cage until the crows had stripped his bones. His name was John Knight, a smuggler's runner, and his ghost is said to walk the city still. John's tale began with tragedy. Orphaned young, he was taken in by Dr. Edgar Pullen, a Canterbury surgeon whose grim trade was amputating the shattered limbs of soldiers from the Kent Buffs Regiment of Foot. Without the benefit of anaesthesia, Pullen relied on contraband rum and brandy to numb the agony of the sore. His dealings with smugglers on the Kent coast inevitably drew young John into their shadowy brotherhood. The boy was fleet-footed and sharp-eyed, able to slip past the riders of His Majesty's Customs stationed at Fordwich. To the Owlers gang, ruthless smugglers who ran the lanes of Kent under moonlight, John was invaluable, yet his usefulness made him enemies. One misty September night in 1706, John was betrayed by a jealous rival. On the Folkestone Road near Bishopsbourne, he and his companions were ambushed, musket fire cutting through the fog. Though but a boy, he was dragged before the justices at Castle House and declared a ringleader. His youth brought him no mercy. He was sentenced to hang in a gibbet cage, his body left to rot for the crows, a warning to others who might run rum or brandy through Kent. On the night of his hanging, the Owlers gang carried out their own justice. Under cover of darkness, they reached through the iron bars of the gibbet and plucked the boy's eyes from his corpse. At dawn, the betrayer William Nells, a smuggler turned informant, awoke to find those lifeless eyes set upon his own doorstep, staring up from the cobbles outside his home in Dover Street, beside where the Old City Inn now stands. The message was clear. Panicked, Nells fled into the Dover Road, but as the morning mail coach thundered past, he stumbled beneath its hooves. His body was crushed in the dirt, his betrayal repaid in full. Yet death did not quiet the horror. To this day, on bleak November nights, passers-by claim to creak of a gibbet cage in the wind, though it has long since vanished. The sound is accompanied by the faint cry of a boy and the flutter of wings as unseen crows circle overhead. Worse still is the apparition of William Nells, forever fleeing, eyes wide with terror, into the new Dover Road. His ghost is said to dart before travellers, only to vanish beneath invisible hooves, the echo of a coach and horses pounding into the dark. And as for John Knight himself, his spirit is restless. Some swear they have seen him, a thin boy in ragged clothes, eyes hollow sockets, darting like a shadow down the lanes, as though still trying to outrun the king's men. Others claim to hear the clink of chains, the groan of rusted iron, as the gibbet cage swings on the corner of Dover Street where he once hung. 4 gallows once stood in Canterbury, Northgate Street, Westgate Gale, Worthgate Place and Dover Street. But it is here at Dover Street that John Knight's tale refuses to die. The smuggler boy, betrayed and broken, still walks the night. A way that leans into its history and atmosphere while leaving the reader with a chill. The Ghost of the Merchant's Maid, Canterbury Youth Hostel, New Dover Road. If you ever find yourself staying at the Canterbury Youth Hostel on New Dover Road, you may be unaware that the fine Georgian house you sleep in was once a wealthy merchant's dwelling. Its brickwork and high windows give little away, but behind the walls lies a tale that chills every visitor who dares to listen. The story begins in 1846, when the merchant of the house began a secret affair with a young Irish maid who had recently entered service there. For 8 months they met in shadowed corridors and empty chambers, while the merchant's wife lived separately in another wing of the house, oblivious to his betrayal. It was only when the maid confided in the housekeeper that she was with child that the truth began to stir. The maid declared boldly that her master was the father, and when she confronted him directly, his response was not that of guilt but of cold calculation. Bound by her Catholic faith, she could not consider ending the pregnancy, but the merchant saw only scandal, disgrace, and an unwanted mouth to feed. On the night of Friday, November 12th, 1846, he resolved the matter in the most brutal of ways. Luring the maid to the steep staircase, he forced her to fall. Her neck broke upon the wooden steps, her unborn child perishing with her. The terrible sound of her body striking the stairs echoed through the house, rousing servants and family alike. Though suspicion lingered, the master of the house was never brought to justice. He lived out his days in comfort and was later buried in St. Martin's Cemetery, the oldest Christian burial ground in England, as though he were a man of honour. But the dead do not rest so easily. From that night forward, the house seemed to carry the weight of the maid's final terror. Every year, on the Friday closest to November 12th, guests and staff have reported the same harrowing phenomenon, the thunderous crash of a body tumbling down the staircase. The entire building shakes as though rocked to its very foundations, and those who hear it say the sound lodges deep in the bones, impossible to forget. Worse still are the whispers from the attic rooms, now used to house visiting teachers. It is said that when the hour is late, a thin wail can be heard, the disembodied cry of a child that never lived. Some dismiss it as the wind threading through old beams, but others swear they have heard the plaintive sobs as clear as any living infant. The servants of long ago may be gone, yet staff who lock up the hostel late at night admit they dread the silence that follows. The moment the bolts slide shut, the house seems to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Many rush their duties on November nights, unwilling to linger near the staircase where she died. The question is always asked in whispers by those who know the tale. Would you stay there? For in the darkened halls of the Canterbury Youth Hostel, time seems to fold in on itself, and every November, the broken body of the maid and the sorrow of her unborn child replay their tragedy, a ghostly reminder that justice was never served.